We are here today with Robin Howeiler with the Plains Indians and Pioneers Museum in Woodward.
And that's a mouthful, isn't
It is, yes. I think they might have changed the name. I don't know.
Maybe
yes.
maybe we just never called it the right name.
That's right.
We actually call it the Muse.
There
The
you go.
Muse.
It's way shorter.
Yes. Hey, it's really great to have you with us today. We appreciate you taking some time.
Thanks for having me.
We love Woodward, and so the whole purpose of our videos is to promote our wonderful town. And this is a really cool thing that we have that we can share. And so we appreciate you talking to us. So just a little bit about you, a little bit about the museum, and then we're going to go through and kind of look at a few things.
Okay.
So tell us, you are from the area, but then you left us for a bit.
I did. I grew up, went to school here in Woodward, and then promptly disappeared for 40 years. Did 21 years in the Navy. Left there and went into the intelligence community and did that for about 15 years or so. And when I came out of the intelligence community, the money was starting to dry up. There was a lot of hand-wringing going on about a presidential election coming out. They didn't know where the budgets were going to fall. So they cut my program, and I just decided rather than stay on the East Coast, it's time to come back here. My family has been farming and ranching in this area for more than 100 years.
Wow.
So,
You have your own legacy then in Northwest Oklahoma.
Oh, absolutely.
With your family.
absolutely.
Well, we're glad that you're back because we love it here and we want everyone else to know how wonderful it is so that we can have more. So what brought you, how did you end up at the museum? Was this kind of the work you already did, or is this a new field for you?
No, it was completely new work for me. I graduated college with a degree in literature, which you can't do a whole lot with. And my family has been involved in this museum almost from the start, contributing money, time,
Sure.
resources. A lot of the artifacts here are from my family. And so I always had a deep interest in this museum and the history of Northwest Oklahoma. I kind of had a thought I wanted to work here. I didn't really have to work when I came back. Pretty fortunate that way. But I just really wanted to come back home and be around family again after so many years being all over the world.
Absolutely.
And so this is where I landed. And I managed to get a job here. I started as the assistant curator, and that kind of evolved into a social media
Yes.
thing. I do all this.
So you are the storyteller.
I'm the guy.
Yes.
Oh, good. It's good to know.
Yes,
Some of
that's
us-
awesome.
Yes.
Very wonderful.
Good.
All right, so the museum opened what year?
1966.
All right.
September of 66.
And how has it evolved over these decades?
Oh, well, it's actually, it's grown in terms of its footprint. The initial building was that room, this rotunda, that room, and the area back to the red wall back there. And that was it. And over the years, they expanded back towards the back. They built a agriculture center, another building out there. And then we put the lineman cabin out on the grounds. So it's grown, and to Rob Roberson's credit, he's the executive director here. He has worked very hard over the past 10, 20 years to develop kind of an educational sort of programming
Yes.
thing. We get a lot of school kids in here, and he keeps them very entertained.
Yes.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I was just thinking that a minute ago. I remember when my kids were younger, and when they were in elementary school, I think I brought them here over spring break with my nephew who was visiting, and I could tell my nephew wasn't real sure about his aunt Tinner taking him to do this museum thing. And Bob was wonderful. Actually, back then Mr. Goins was here, and he gave us a tour that was fantastic. And then Mr. Roberson took us outside, and we did some cool things where we threw, I don't remember, but it was awesome. We threw like a ball with a stick. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was terrible at it, I can tell you that right now. He said, quit following through. I don't know how not to follow through. But anyway, so I mean, it was very cool. It really drew my kids in. It drew in my nephew, who I know was very, very skeptical of this idea.
Well, and that's always been, for me personally, that's always been my emphasis in the social media stuff I do. I try to put a little kind of smarty thing on the end.
Yes.
Just so people will pay attention.
Right.
The history of this region is rich and colorful and absolutely wonderful. And it's filled with a lot of characters that you will never find anywhere else. And so it's important to kind of push that stuff out there so people know what's behind them. So I always try to do things, the social media posts we do, I try to do them in a way that makes people want to sit there and read all that and go, oh, all right.
I love it. That's fantastic. All right, so tell us about this room. We've got these beautiful murals.
Yeah, all of these are hand painted on canvas. We have we have 6 that were done by Paul Long. He was born and raised here. Moved off, he went up to Nebraska for his art school, went out to New York, and was an illustrator for a number of years for publishers out there. But he always had a love for this area. So his murals really depict bits of Northwest Oklahoma history. Each one of these, and there's a lot of people in the paintings that, people he knew. He graduated from Woodward High School in 1917. So he had this, he was born just before the turn of the century, grew up here. He knew a lot of people that were in the murals. For instance, the fellow up there in the nice hat and the gold vest and standing talking is Temple Houston. There's people throughout those that he knew and kind of grew up with. So the 2 on the ends that depict Native American scenes, those were done by Pat Patterson, who was better known as Kemoha. And he worked for a local newspaper here for a number of years as a photographer, and he was also an artist. This is the American Indian Room. We have a number of Native American artifacts and relics, many of which came from this area. And we also have our Washita display up in here. I'm also a tour guide at a historic Fort Supply. And so this is, as tragic as it was, it's a really good example of Western Oklahoma history in particular, because Custer was out at Fort Supply for a short period of time before he went down to Washita and attacked Black Kettle's village.
All right, so tell us about the Houston room.
So this is a room dedicated to the life and legacy of Temple Houston. He was the youngest son of General Sam Houston, and came to Woodward shortly after the land run in '93. Set up a law practice here, and this is he's one of those really fascinating characters of local lore. By all accounts, he was a very accomplished attorney. He was a great orator. People would pay money to come listen to him speak about anything. But he was a bit of an enigma because he had this kind of dark side. When he drank, he just became a completely different human being. and got involved in a couple of shooting scrapes. But he's definitely someone who made an impact on the local history. In fact, we have his Colt Peacemaker that was probably used in the Cabinet Saloon shooting in 1895. We have a display that includes the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, the Woodward tornado. I want to point something out just really quickly, and this is self-indulgent, I admit. That portrait hanging on the wall is of my great-great-grandparents. And my great-great-grandmother was the one that immigrated to the United States and filed for a patent on the family farm. Wow. I managed to sneak her around that. Then, of course, we have the exhibits about the Woodward tornado. Dr. Dana Fisher has always pointed out, she said, you know, you're going to sell Woodward. There are three things, and I can only remember two. And she said it's historically, there's Temple Houston and then the Woodward tornado. She said those two, there was a third thing, I can't possibly remember it, but those are the things most kind of tell a story about the people and the growth in this area. This is our display for Woodward's Miss Dolly, Mary Eliza Keyser. She was a prostitute who moved here, started her own brothel back in the 1890s into up until actually statehood. They had all of those kinds of places situated on the north side of the tracks down there between probably 8th Street up to about 11th. And she ran one of those. Interestingly, she walked away from her industry and bought a small farm just to the southwest of Woodward, probably out there somewhere around that.
I have it. I have a plat book with her name in it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's on my desk.
And she was killed in the Woodward tornado. They found her body out there, and she's buried here in Woodward. This cashier cage is the original. It came out of the original Stock Exchange Bank, which was located in Fargo. Oh. And before the Benbrooks moved it all to Woodward. They did keep the branch going in Fargo until about the late 40s, I think, and this came out of that. And it never fails. We get a lot of people that come through and can remember being a small child and hoisting themselves up to see what was going on behind the cage there. This is, we have some items from Frank Saunders' photography studio. In fact, that's the house I mentioned before on 6th in Texas. That would be on the east side of 6th. And that house still stands, and it still has that weird protrusion where he had kind of a sunlight, skylight. Yeah. And it's all there. That's the really amazing thing. This came out of Moreland, from the Moreland Leader, and has been here for a long, long time. A former industry here in Woodward, Trigo's Westware, and we actually have quite a bit of stuff in the back in the storerooms that we've brought out that came out of Trigo's, and it'd be kind of interesting to get that stuff back out here. These are real. They are, the fellow who owns all these has every Winchester that was ever made. Oh, wow. And he gave us a sampling of what he has, and some of these are just incredible. My favorite is over here. It's a 45-60, which would make it a buffalo gun. The weapon probably weighs 25 pounds. I can't imagine trying to hold that while you're mounted on the back of a horse, but I love telling this guy's story. Al Jennings was a lawyer, came to Woodward. His brothers were, one was killed and the other was severely wounded in the gunfight with Temple Houston at the Cabinet Saloon. And Al, after his brother died, just decided to go on the outlaw trail. But he was never very good at it. I don't think, over the course of his outlaw career, I don't think he stole more than $60 at any one time, holding up trains. Finally, they caught him. They sentenced him to life in prison. Teddy Roosevelt pardoned him. He comes out of prison. He runs for governor of Oklahoma, fails at that, started writing books about his life as an outlaw. And it was all exaggeration. And in fact, I recently posted that he had done an interview that was published nationwide saying that he had personally killed Temple Houston and Jack Love while they were standing on a porch. None of that is true. But he makes it out to Hollywood, and he found some fame there, directing, producing, writing, acting in movies. But it just never, he just never quite found his niche, I guess. He sued the people that made the Lone Ranger, because there was a Lone Ranger episode where the Lone Ranger shoots the gun out of the hand of Al Jennings. And Al said that would never have happened. And so he sued these people and lost the suit. The cool thing, that's his Colt there. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is, you may notice, there's no front sight. Mm-hmm. Al filed that off because he thought having that sight would slow him down as it came out of the holster on a draw. Back here we have some artifacts from Fort Supply, and just things that were found on the grounds. And, it's always it's a kind of an interesting story, a piece of Northwest Oklahoma history. This is kind of interesting. There's a piece of black alabaster in there. Mm-hmm. There are only three places in the world where you can find black alabaster. One is China, somewhere in Italy, and Woodward, Oklahoma, or Northwest Oklahoma. That came from up there at the caverns, and all of the rocks in there are on loan from Alabaster Caverns Park.
Yeah, Carrier Nation.
Carrier Nation. I put that up on kind of a whim. After I discovered we have one of her hatchets in the collection, I thought, oh, this is just too cool. And so I did a lot of research on her, and she, interestingly, and I point that out in there, she had been busting it. She would go in with her pockets filled with rocks, and she'd start busting bottles in the saloons, and her husband jokingly suggested that she could do a lot more damage if she had a hatchet. And she informed him that was the most sensible thing you've ever said since I married you. And so she got the hatchet, and she would walk in, greet the bartenders with "Good morning, destroyer of men's souls," and then start smashing everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
I read that in just south of Sealing. They've got one of those green signs.
Yep, she had a cabin, and in fact, there it is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, near Sealing, yep.
And when she came to Woodward, which was pretty frequent, interestingly, she stayed with the Temple Houston family. We've kind of come around full circle. We're still working on this. This entire display we call the Baird Collection that was donated to the museum several years ago. And Mr. Baird kind of fancied himself an artist. And, you know, this is one of those original case. That's all cast iron.
Wow.
And would sit up on top of case implement buildings. And he somehow got his hands on one and decided to paint it because it was all just kind of flat black. But he got it. We put it up as it is.
That's pretty cool.
Used to be one here in Woodward, over on, kind of down on the east side of Maine. I can't remember exactly which of those buildings. They had one of those perched way up high on there. It disappeared. Well, it's kind of a mix of displays, but it portrays Northwest Oklahoma agricultural history from well before statehood, probably up through the early 1960s. We have a number of murals in this building that were painted by Fred Olds. He was an artist from the Guthrie area, I believe. So this area here, we dedicated to Setanta. He was a leader of the Kiowa tribe here in this part of Oklahoma. And they absolutely depended on the buffalo for their food, shelter, clothing, and a number of other things. So you kind of see this progression where it finally gets over to where after 1875, when the Red River War ended and they had forced all of the tribes back into Indian territory, as it was done then. Out on the Texas Panhandle, the plains out there, the buffalo hunters just went crazy. There was a big demand for buffalo hide. I got to get a sign to put up on. We're kind of working on this, but this particular press came from the owners of the what was then the Woodward Daily Press, and it was owned by the Clark family. Yeah, owned by the Clark family. And Mr. Clark lost part of his finger on this at one point. And so it's kind of, and you can see there's a whole lot of mechanical things that can injure. So we have here some scenes from early territorial history, and then the establishment of farms. Over here, there's a number of implements from the early days of farming. This is it's all leather. They would throw that on the back of workhorses as they were pulling plows or whatever. And the leather kind of moves across the back and keeps the flies off, is the idea. So you can kind of see a progression with the murals. Things are becoming just a little bit more modern. Now, that one was Fred Olds. I think these other two murals were done by Janice Soul. That is the broom manufacturing. Broom corn used to be a big crop here. And in fact, there was a broom factory here in Woodward.
All right, so we are here in the Mercantile. This
Right.
is the gift shop for the museum. So you want to tell us just a little bit, you have some local artists that have items here. Tell us a little bit about how this part works.
And yeah, I think that's the unique thing here. We try to find local artists who have something that is sellable.
Yes.
And we'll bring it in here, and because we get a lot of tourist traffic from all over the world throughout the year. It's surprisingly significant. We have books that either hit on local events or local history. Some were written by folks in the area. So we try to keep kind of a local flavor to everything we do in here.
Sure.
And the money that we make in here actually goes to help the museum, help us in our day-to-day operations, because it costs a lot of money to run
Yes.
this place. So.
Will you tell everyone where are you located? What phone number would we call you at? And tell us all the goods for how to reach you.
Okay, so we're located at 2009 Williams Avenue in Woodward, Oklahoma. The phone number is 580-256-6136. We have a website at www.nwok-pipm.org. And we're on Facebook, and I couldn't possibly tell you. Just on Facebook, you can search for Plains Indians and Pioneers Museum.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.